To address this, the government plans to target subsidies more effectively, ensuring that they benefit those in greatest need. This shift is expected to save $129.4 million annually. The government also plans to streamline state-owned companies by reducing their size, merging them or liquidating underperforming ones, and drafting a special law for companies that provide essential services. Minister of Construction and Infrastructure Dr. Abdullah Muttalib states that the current administration has ensured the completion of 38 developmental projects regardless of budget constraints, affirming that additional 26 projects will be completed by this year end.
Speaking at a program aired on PSMNEWS, Minister Dr. Muttalib stated that the biggest challenge faced in executing projects was the misallocation of the budget for the projects. The minister noted that the previous administration initiated several projects across the islands, but they were halted due to the lack of secured funds. Therefore, he mentioned that the current administration is striving to ensure the completion of projects expeditiously as per schedule. Furthermore, he assured that the State Budget 2025 will prioritize to address housing issues and will facilitate the implementation of several projects pledged by President Dr. Mohamed Moise. The government has proposed a state budget worth $3.7 billion to the Parliament, which includes $2.3 billion for recurrent expenditures and $862.3 million for capital expenditures. The government expects to receive $2.57 billion in donations and collect $428 million in savings due to stringent measures aimed at reducing state expenses. The budget includes $804 million for 695 Public Sector Investment Program (PSIP) projects. Of this amount, $493 million has been allocated for 396 ongoing projects and $104 million for 62 projects which have not seen the commencement of practical works.
Housing Development Corporation (HDC) launches several projects which are bound to bring revolutionary transformations to Hulumale. The projects were officially inaugurated by Minister of Economic Development and Trade Mohammad Said at a special ceremony under the name Transforming Tomorrow. During the ceremony, an MOU pertaining to the design consultancy of the Isle Adventure Park and the provision of operational training for the park was signed. The MOU was signed by Managing Director of HDC, Fazul Rashid, and the Director of City Investments Private Limited. Speaking at the ceremony, Managing Director of HDC, Fazul, stated that the launch of these projects were the beginning of a new chapter for the corporation. He stated that the projects will play a pivotal role in bolstering economic growth and make the lifestyle for the residents of Hulumale more convenient. Fazul disclosed that the primary objective of these projects were to sustainably increase the company's revenue generated, expressing optimism in the revenue to increase by threefolds. Minister of Economic Development and Trade Mohammad Said predicts a boom in economic activity next year. He made the remarks during a Transforming Tomorrow ceremony held to launch several major initiatives by Housing Development Corporation (HDC). In his address, Minister Said reflected on the difficult economic and financial situation when President Dr. Mohamed Moise assumed office, highlighting that despite the lack of funds allocated for projects in this year's state budget, he revealed that steps were taken forward to overcome the challenges with the wise advice of the President. The minister stated that the greatest portion of State Budget 2025 was allocated for housing. He expressed optimism in seeing the economic growth by 7% next year. During the ceremony, Minister Said shed light on the economic situation of the Maldives, noting that the Sovereign Development Fund stood at $2 million when the current administration assumed office. He disclosed that the funds have increased to $78 million. Minister further revealed that efforts are underway to give legal authority to the fund. Additionally, Minister anticipated that GDP, which currently stands at $6.5 billion, will increase to $10 billion by 2028. He also expressed confidence that the upcoming year holds promising economic prospects. Maldives Inland Revenue Authority (MIRA) receives $112 million in October, which is a 14.2% decrease compared to the same period same month the previous year. The revenue also exceeded this year's October forecast by 30.5%.
The latest statistics released by MIRA shows that the decrease in revenue from October last year to this year is attributed to the postponement of the collection of Goods and Services Tax (GST), airport tax and fees, green tax, and the change in deadline for the collection of the tourism land rent fees. MIRA revealed that the revenue collected exceeded the anticipated amount due to the increase in GST, green tax, export quota fees, and the airport tax and fees collected, as well as the collection of fees pertaining to sale and exchange of land during the month. The fees related to the sale and exchange of land are variable, as it is a fee levied when the government leases an island. Additionally, MIRA mentioned that the increase in tourist arrivals by 2.1% also generated more revenue from the tourism industry. Furthermore, the government's efforts to secure funds which it had not received also attributed to the increase in revenue. This statistic also shows that GST was the largest contributor to the revenue received by MIRA in October this year, amounting to $70.7 million. Income tax followed as the second largest source with $7.49 million. In addition, $5 million was collected as green tax, $4.92 million as airport development fees, $6.14 million from the sale and exchange of land leased, and $17.9 million from other types of taxes and fees.
Maldives Industrial Fisheries Company MIFCO reports a revenue of $20.8 million from the sale of its Fasmeru products in the previous year, reflecting a 35% increase compared to the $16.7 million earned in the previous year. This was disclosed in the company's financial report. Sales of canned and pouched meat also saw a notable rise, with MIFCO earning $18.6 million from these products, up from $14.8 million in 2022. Under its Fasmeru brand, MIFCO's veal products gained popularity, generating $1.6 million in revenue last year compared to $1 million in 2022. The company's frozen fish sales also increased, bringing in $679,172, up from $526,520 in the previous year. In line with the growth in domestic sales, Maldives fish exports also saw an uptick, with exports of frozen shrimp, canned and pouched fish and fish meal all rising. Looking ahead, the government aims to export a larger proportion of the fish received by MIFCO as value-added products, which is expected to significantly increase revenue, potentially doubling it. Argentine inflation dips to 193%, landing below the 200% threshold for the first time in close to a year. Data from statistics agency INDEC shows as President Javier Milei's dramatic austerity agenda bears fruit.
Slowly, inflation, pulled back in part by the government's dramatic public spending adjustment, has however come at the cost of consumption in a battered economy where more than half of the country has fallen into poverty. Data from the INDEC showed that monthly inflation soared to 2.7% in October from 3.5% the previous month, its lowest since November 2021. The annual rate dipped below 200% for the first time since November last year. With rent and utility costs drove monthly price rises up 5.4%, prices in transport, food and non-alcoholic drinks rose just 1.2% from the previous month. But the good news can be hard to grasp for Argentines who have had to tighten their belts to make it to the end of the month. The government has slashed subsidies on public services and increased public sector layoffs. Inflation is still very high by global standards and has contributed to a deep fall in purchasing power. Consumers are buying less beef in the famously steak-loving country after Milei ended the previous government's freeze on beef prices. Beef consumption fell in the first 6 months of the year to its lowest level in 13 years.
Sri Lanka tightens security as electoral officials made final preparations in Sri Lanka a day before a snap general election called by new President Anurukumara Dissanayaka.
Officials were seen walking out of the elections office in Colombo with cartons of electoral documents before being transported by buses heading to polling stations.
Well, the conventional wisdom is that the JVP NPP will get enough seats to govern on their own. So overall majority requires them to get 113. Perhaps they will get 120 or maximum 130. One thing though is quite clear. Yes, they should have a majority to govern on their own. However, they should not get a two-thirds majority. And one other thing, as much as we need a strong government, we do need a strong opposition as well.
Disayanke dissolved parliament on September 24th to clear the way for the general elections days after the Marxist-Lenin leader was elected president on a platform for change.
Kumara Disayanke has been repackaged, he's been branded. So he's done various gestures that have a certain resonance with the population at large, saying yes, he's heading in the right direction, he's cutting waste, he's going to do corruption, he's going to do all of that. But as I say, they're gestures. Yet we haven't seen what the true face of an NPP government is, and I think we'll have to wait for after the parliamentary election.
The election became necessary as Disayanke had just 3 lawmakers in the outgoing parliament whose 5-year term was due to end in August 2025 and needed a fresh mandate to push his policies. Sri Lanka has 17.1 million voters who are eligible to participate in the elections. About 1 million of them are first-time voters.
Carlos Alcaraz casts doubt over his continued participation in the ATP finals. After cutting his training short, he had been revealed he was feeling unwell with stomach issues following a loss to Casper Ruud in his tournament opener.
The Spaniard coach, Juan Carlos Ferrero, said that Carlos Alcaraz is unlikely to be at his best for today's ATP finals match against Andrei Rublev as the 4-time Grand Slam champion continues to struggle with illness. And of Carlos Alcaraz lost to Norway's Casper Ruud in his opening match on Monday, and the 21-year-old cancelled a public training session the following day. Ferrero told reporters that Alcaraz has been facing breathing difficulties upon movement, adding that it is a bad time to get sick. Ferrero noted that it is going to be difficult for Alcaraz to give his 100%. Alcaraz won the Beijing title in October, but his form since winning Wimbledon earlier this year has been unconvincing, suffering a second-round exit at the US Open and being beaten by Ugo Humbert in the round of 16 at Paris Masters. After taking on Rublev later, he faces world number 2 Alexander Zverev in his final round-robin match of the 8-man event. Alcaraz reached the semi-finals of the ATP finals last year, where he was beaten by eventual winner Novak Djokovic.
And that's all we have for you right now. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more news updates. Have a good evening. Goodbye.
ಹಫ್ತಾಯ ನಿಮಗೆನ್ ದಾಯರು ಎಕಿ ದಾಯರಾತಕು ರಾಜ್ಯಗೆ ಮಶಹುಗಾವೆಸ್ ಎತಕ್ ಕಮೆ ಹಿಂಗಾಗೆಂದೆ
ಮಿತನ್ ಡೆವಲಪ್ ವೆಗೆನ್ ದಾಣಿ ಗೆದೊರುಗೆ ಮನ್ಸಿಲಕ ವಜೀಫಾಗೆ ಮನ್ಸಿಲಕ ವೆಗೆನ್